Buyouts, trades, signings. Here are 3 things that the Maple Leafs need to do once free agency opens up on Saturday. Hello everyone, my name is Nick Barton. I'm a hockey reporter from Toronto who's covered the Toronto Marlies for the last 3 seasons. If you do enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like. If you really enjoy it, subscribe. We're getting closer and closer to 2,000 subscribers, so if you do, again, enjoy the video and you enjoy the Leafs content, hit the subscription button down below. But now let's talk about the 3 things the Maple Leafs need to do to prep themselves for the beginning of the season when free agency opens up on Saturday. Number 1 is signing players. We know that a few players are not going to be re-signing for the Maple Leafs, and with that being said, Toronto needs to go out and really find some players in free agency, and although it's not the best crop of players, they need to find players that work in their team, and that's what's going to have to start once free agency opens up on Saturday. Now, things did get a little bit interesting on Friday with a couple of buyouts. Blake Wheeler was bought out. Matt Duchene was bought out. Could the Maple Leafs go after one of those guys as a 2C with possibly John Tavares moving over to the wing? That could be interesting. Or maybe just Tavares stay at center and Blake Wheeler plays on the wing. That could be something that's interesting. I think you have to look at all options here in terms of buyouts, and even looking at Matt Duchene, because it looks like at this point too, with him being bought out by Nashville, he's going to be a free agent who's looking for a place to go, and it could be a place in Toronto, maybe if Blake Wheeler doesn't work out. And from Elliot Friedman, Blake Wheeler's agent Matt Keeter indicates the winger prefers the Eastern Conference, less travel and a new experience. We will see what evolves. I didn't think Wheeler would be possible in Toronto, but when I saw this tweet, it kind of opened up a new door to me, and it's always possible that he could make an impact on a team like Toronto in a Canadian market where it's really a market where he could be a guy who would be loved in this organization. And maybe the Maple Leafs go after him, maybe they don't. But him and Matt Duchene could be interesting guys who could play both center or on the wing for Toronto, who would be impact players, in my opinion. Both are guys who've been leaders on teams, and I think that's vital when you're bringing in a free agent. I think when you look at these 2 guys and the leadership that they have and the fact of how much they want to win the Stanley Cup at this point in their career, it's sort of like Jason Spezza, but Spezza didn't produce at the level of Wheeler or Duchene. So I think when you look at these 2, whether they can play center, whether they can play wing, I know Wheeler is a right wing, he's a right shot, so maybe it doesn't make as much sense as a guy like Matt Duchene, who's a left shot and could possibly play on the wing or center alongside John Tavares. I think there's a possibility there for either of these guys to come to Toronto, and it's up to Brad Treliving and whether or not he might want to pay these guys the amount of money that they will want to come to a team. But I do think Toronto should be in the mix for these players once free agency opens up on Saturday. But another player who the Maple Leafs are reportedly interested in signing, and when I say interested, I mean very interested in signing, is Connor Brown. During Friday's edition of 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman said in there that Edmonton and Toronto are the front runners to sign Connor Brown. Before we talk about points or anything like that, as a personable signing, I think this would be perfect for Toronto. He would really work in the bottom 6 with the Maple Leafs as a right wing, and it just makes sense from all standpoints. Plus, he's been here before, and he is from here, so I think with the experience that he's learned when he first started here to, going around and playing for other teams and experiencing that, I think it would be perfect for the Maple Leafs to get this guy and bring him home. He has dealt with injuries and only played 4 games last season with the Washington Capitals, but I do think this could be somebody who could really be an underrated player with the Maple Leafs. He's scored 20 goals before. He really could be an effective player on the right side for Toronto. This makes a lot of sense, and if Brad Treliving can get him locked up, this would be such a smart deal for Toronto. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Is Blake Wheeler, Matt Duchene, or Connor Brown worth picking up when free agency opens up on Saturday? Put it down below and let me know. But now on to number 2, trades. In the last few weeks, it's been reported that Treliving is really looking to beef up the defense, and as you know, in a recent video, I said he was looking to juice up the defense, and there are a few interesting candidates for that. But at the end of the day, I think when you look at this defense in general as well, I think it's pretty solid, but when it comes to any player that they could be interested in, it's really looking like, and it should be about, not giving up too much for this player if they do go out and trade for a defenseman. Like, you hear about the Erik Karlsson talks, and that's a road the Maple Leafs should not go down. It doesn't sound like San Jose wants to retain a lot of money on Erik Karlsson, so really that's not going to work if San Jose wouldn't retain anything for Toronto, because at the end of the day, Toronto's cap space is getting smaller and smaller with every signing that they make, and it just doesn't seem like Erik Karlsson would make sense here. Although it would be an interesting fit, it just doesn't seem like it's in the books at this point. Now, there were also reports that Travis Sanheim would be remaining in Philadelphia, and that really takes away another defender that the Maple Leafs could have targeted. I know there's Noah Hanifin in Calgary. Does any of these players really make sense? I mean, put it in the comment section down below as well. Do you think any of these targets of a trade would make sense for Toronto? I mean, you look at it, you got TJ Brodie, Morgan Riley, Luke Schenn potentially coming back. You have Jake McCabe, Timothy Liljegren, Connor Timmins. There's a few players, Mark Giordano as well, who really fit the mold of the Maple Leafs right now, and they've been really solid defensively over the last few years, and I don't know if there is a problem with their defense at this point. Maybe you'd like a guy who could bring some grit and, you know, really beef it up. But I mean, at the end of the day too, Toronto was a team in the playoffs in the regular season who was really good at the defensive end. And is there really a point in, you know, bringing a new player in and giving up assets to bring that player in? I'm not sure. But number 3, and likely the most important thing on this list, is to get your signings right in William Nylander and Auston Matthews. We can start off talking about Auston Matthews a little bit. We know, and everyone knows at this point, that Matthews wants to remain in Toronto, and it seems like eventually the Maple Leafs are going to get him locked up. None of the parties, whether it's the Leafs or Matthews and his agent, are really worried about getting this deal done. They both know what Matthews wants to do, and it looks like they just want to find a number. And maybe they're waiting a little. Maybe they're waiting to see what Nylander gets, and that's another big topic of discussion around Toronto, because it's either he gets signed or he gets traded. In a recent article from Pierre LeBrun, he talks about some rumblings around the league, and one of them is about Nylander. He says the first thing that's important to know on the William Nylander front is that Saturday isn't any kind of real deadline for the Maple Leafs. The fact that he has a modified no-trade clause kicking in isn't even seen by GM Brad Treliving as a moment when he must be signed or traded. There's some leeway there, but there's still some urgency to find a resolution as soon as possible so the Leafs can continue to address other roster decisions. The problem, in my understanding of the situation as of Thursday, is that Nylander's ask so far in contract talks is certainly above what the Leafs can live with in an extension. There appears to be a sizable gap, but my sense is the Leafs will just keep hammering away at it, hoping to find a path to an extension. The other reality is that though it sounds good on paper to simply trade Nylander if they can't sign him, look at what's transpiring around the NHL right now as far as teams is not being able to move money. As talented a player as Nylander is, what the Leafs have found out this week is that his trade market isn't nearly as robust as we might have predicted. There's no cap room out there, and any team trading for Nylander would want him extended. If the Leafs do trade Nylander, they also have to have a plan for how they replace his offense. This is a fluid situation, but it's one that's put the Leafs in a tough spot. They want to sign him, but at a deal that makes sense for them. Let's see what the next week brings on that front. So there you have it. William Nylander is either going to be traded or he's going to be signed, and the next few weeks are going to be vital to really know and understand what's going to happen with the player in the future. So to recap, we have a few players that the Maple Leafs need to sign, and that goes, to me, further than the 3 players that I listed in Blake Wheeler, Connor Brown, or Matt Duchene. It really makes sense, you know, to bring in some more depth, and I think that, you know, when you look at the Ryan Reeves reports, I think that does make sense to a point, really. It does interest me a little bit, and it would be very fascinating to see him on this team and how he would fit into this mold, but also the fact that they need scoring wingers as well, and that was a problem in the playoffs, and I think, you know, that might come in a guy like Nick Robertson and whether he might be healthy. Guys like Pontus Holmberg, who showed in the playoffs with the Marlies that he could be a scorer in the playoffs, and also Alex Steeves, there's a potential there. I mean, Nick Abruzzese. There are a few players coming in the wings that could make sense for Toronto as depth scoring for the future, and they're in low AAV deals too, which could bode well for Toronto. But as of right now, there are a few players that need to be signed. There are a few players that need to be brought in, and it could be Blake Wheeler. It could be Connor Brown. It could be Matt Duchene or Ryan Reeves. But Saturday is really going to be a telling point, and it all begins, I believe, at 12 p.m. And then we have the trades. Who would the Maple Leafs trade for? Do they even make a trade? That is still yet to be seen. But there is some interesting stuff on that front. And then finally, once again, whether they sign William Nylander or whether they trade him and Matthews and when he will be signed. All of that's really interesting stuff, and we're going to get more clarity in about 24 to 48 hours. So that is going to be it for this video. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like. If you really enjoyed it, subscribe. It helps a lot. And again, let's try and hit 2,000 subscribers very, very soon. I want to thank you all for the support on the recent videos. There will be videos tomorrow for free agency, so stay tuned for all of those. But again, that is where I'm going to end off the video. I want to thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow when free agency opens up.